I wanted to mention the real cool benefit of rebound exercise. NASA has done quite a bit of research on rebounding, and I'm going to put some links down below, but it's actually quite fascinating that they're doing research on rebounding because what they found is when you're in space without gravity, you start losing your bone tissue and your muscle tissue. So they're trying to come up with ways to counter that. But rebounding exercise is jumping on a trampoline. Now, if you're going to do rebounding and you're a little bit older, I would always recommend doing it with some type of support structure so you can hold yourself, because you don't want to be jumping on this trampoline and then jumping off and falling or injuring yourself. But there's quite a few benefits to rebounding exercise. It's convenient, it improves your mobility, your posture, your balance, your gait. It improves the fear of falling. It can even reduce your risk of osteoporosis. But I think the biggest benefit has to do with this right here, stimulating the lymphatic system. So let me make this very, very simple. What is the lymphatic system? You have the blood vessels throughout the body, the vascular system, right? And they go from large vessels to smaller vessels to eventually to tiny little blood vessels called capillaries in the tissue. Now, in that same tissue next to the capillaries, you have the beginning of the lymphatic system. Some of the plasma in the blood leaks out into the tissues and it goes right into the lymphatic system. So the fluid in the lymphatic system, called lymph, is made up of plasma and several other things which I don't want to get into at this point. And then the lymph system travels through the body and then eventually dumps back into the vascular system, the venous part of the vascular system. So it's this whole continual loop. So one function of your lymphatic system is to act as a backup for your vascular system. So if there's too much blood, for example, the lymph system can handle that overflow. But the thing you need to know about your lymphatic system is it doesn't have a pump like the vascular system does. So it needs movement, or else there's no pump. The lymph becomes stagnant or congested. The two big purposes of the lymphatic system are, number one, to support the immune system, because you have all these lymph nodes and you have all these T cells and B cells that help to capture and consolidate pathogens that have invaded the system and deal with them, kill them, and disregard them, as well as to help recycle old red blood cells and damaged red blood cells and recycle them. That's what the spleen does. The spleen is a very large lymphatic node. And the other function of the lymphatic system that a lot of people are unaware of is that it helps to transport fat through the body. So when you eat dietary fat and it goes into your intestines, it goes directly into the lymphatic system, not into your blood vessels. Fat and water do not mix. So the body has to package this fat in a way that can be transported easily through the system. So one way that it packages the fat is through something called a chylomicron. The word chylo means juice and microns mean small particles. So a chylomicron is very simply the grocery bag that carries the fat to the various parts of the body for both energy and as a precursor or material to build hormones, especially adrenal hormones to counter stress. All of the hormones in the gonads, the testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, are made from fat and cholesterol. The cellular membranes need fat. The nervous system, the brain, needs fat. Bile comes from cholesterol. Vitamin D comes from cholesterol. So in other words, this fat is very, very important to supporting body tissue as well as giving you energy. And one very common thing that I hear over and over and over when people start doing rebounding exercise is their energy goes straight up and vertical. And I think it has a lot to do with the fat being more activated in the lymphatic system. So the biggest benefit of rebounding exercise has to do with supporting the immune system and to help the transportation of fat through the chylomicrons. Now, as a little side note, since we're on the topic of chylomicrons, I want to just help you understand this a little bit better. When you get a cholesterol test, you usually get your total cholesterol, you get LDL, HDL, right? Now, let's take a look at this a little bit deeper. When someone talks about LDL or HDL, they're not talking about cholesterol. They're talking about the carrier bag, okay? The grocery bag that's carrying the fat through the body. And so we have different densities of these bags, different sizes and different densities. So when we're going from a chylomicron, that's the largest bag. It's also called the ultra low density lipoprotein. And they're calling it ultra low because it's basically filled with fat and very little protein. And if we look at the relationship between this all the way down to HDL, you can see this is a lot smaller. This is the most dense. This is the least dense, okay? So this has the least amount of fat, the most protein. This has the most amount of fat and the least amount of protein. So when we go this direction, more dense, more protein, less lipids. Why? Because these are carrier bags that are going to be dumping off fat into various parts of your body. So we go from a chylomicron, which is an ultra-low dense lipoprotein, to a VLDL. That means very low density lipoprotein. And then there's a little extra step right here called intermediate density lipoprotein. And eventually we get to the low density lipoprotein. And most people think this is the bad one, but there's actually two types of LDL. There's one that's more pathogenic and one that is non-pathogenic. If you're interested, I put some links down below about that. And then we get the HDL, which is a carrier bag that takes the cholesterol from the body tissue and brings it back into the liver. These other ones are going to the liver. Anyway, sorry I got sidetracked there for a minute. The main thing you need to know about rebounding is it's really good for your lymphatic system, especially if you have lymphedema. All right, thanks for watching.